Rumor has it there is going to be a Canon R5 Mark II, which shouldn't be that surprising. Now, the R5, I have used this quite a bit for my professional work and for personal stuff like vlogging and whatnot. And from a still side, this camera is, for me personally, pretty much perfect. I love the resolution. I've never felt limited by it for most stuff. Now, I'm not in every arena of photography, so I can't speak for every photographer, but for like lifestyle stuff, I absolutely have no qualms with the still side, and I am primarily a video shooter, and that brings up the topic of this video of my wish list for the R5 Mark II. I've got a couple things that I'd really like to see, and then I reached out to some fellow filmmakers that have been kind enough to give me their input on their top wish list item for the R5 Mark II. So we'll get into that here in a little bit. So I'm going to assume, before we jump into this top wish list item for me, I'm going to assume that the R5 Mark II is going to get some of the newer features from the newer mirrorless cameras, like no record limit, focus breathing compensation, false color, the little multi-interface hot shoe, all that kind of good stuff. I'm assuming that the R5 II is going to get that. With that said, let's go ahead and jump into it. And I'm just going to start off with my number one absolute wish list item. Like, you could keep everything on the R5 the same, and I'd still be happy if you just gave us Canon Log 2. Just give us the Log 2. Everybody's asking for it, and I really don't think that this is going to limit the sales of your higher-end cinema cameras, because now the R5 II, the mirrorless camera, has Canon Log 2. I don't think that's the case, because there are features on cinema cameras that I personally don't think belong on a mirrorless camera, like dedicated timecode ports and, you know, more dedicated video formats and all that kind of stuff that you'd expect from the Canon cinema cameras. And like probably your biggest competitor, Sony, has S-Log 3 and pretty much all their mirrorless cameras now. And, you know, a lot of people prefer to shoot on those Sony cameras because they have that extra dynamic range. R5 II with Canon Log 2 would honestly, R5 with Canon Log 2 would honestly make it the perfect and the best hybrid camera out there on the market. So please, Canon Log 2, that is like the number one wish list item that I have for the R5 Mark II. Now, I've got a couple other wish list items that we'll get to here in a minute, but I reached out to some creators here on this YouTube platform and asked them what their number one wish list item would be for the Canon R5 Mark II. And this is what they had to say.
Okay, so if we're talking about dream items, my number one item would have to be open gate recording. I would love to see open gate recording brought over to the Canon R5 Mark II. I mean, Lumix has given this to us for years now, and especially now that like content is being created for both horizontal and vertical consumption, I just feel like open gate would just give you way more flexibility in your video content creation recording. So I would love to see that feature brought over to the R5 Mark II.
What's up, everybody? BT here. Tyler, thanks for having me on. I loved my Canon R5. I used it extensively for all of my professional photography needs, and it never let me down. But there was one gripe that I had with it. And if they are going to be making an R5 Mark II and possibly an R5C Mark II, I now have the R5C and I really enjoy this camera as well. There's one thing I would want it to have that probably nobody else is going to mention in this video, because I'm coming from it as a photographer first rather than a videographer, and that's a much higher shutter speed. Right now, the camera can only do 1/8,000th of a second, whether you're in mechanical shutter or electronic shutter. And sometimes that's just not fast enough. If I've got something that's like a 1.2 lens, a 1.4 lens, I'm outside, maybe I'm on a beach with a ton of reflection, I still can't shoot wide open. So I'd love to see something like 1/16,000 or 1/32,000. That would be my wish. And C-Log 2. Canon just give us C-Log 2. All right, thanks Tyler, I'll catch you later. Peace.
Hey Tyler, thanks for having me. I'm really excited about the potential release of a Canon R5 Mark II. Now, I love the R5 and I think we can all agree it is a fantastic photography camera, but personally, I'm a videographer and there are some things I'd like to see improved in this camera video-wise. So there's a lot of little stuff in the menu system I'd like to see changed and made better. But the big things, of course, are gonna be C-Log 2 so we can get more dynamic range and make this camera more competitive with the mirrorless cameras from other manufacturers like Sony. In addition to that, I'd like to see more usability and stability in terms of shooting video, so longer run times in terms of no time limits and also overheating. And lastly, I would love to see a full-size HDMI port. Okay, there's a lot of other stuff, but those are the main things. Thanks for having me, Tyler.
Hey, what's going on, Tyler? Thank you for having me be a part of this project. So this is my wish item. This is what I would love Canon to do for the R5 Mark II, and that is incorporate C-Log 2. Now, other camera companies, they've done a great job incorporating their log profile in all of their cameras, especially their newer ones. You know, over the last couple years, Sony, for instance, have incorporated S-Log 3 in all of their cameras. And it just makes it an easier workflow in post. I am not a huge fan of C-Log 3. C-Log 2 is, it's grown on me. I love it. I think it's the best log profile Canon has. And I feel that if Canon incorporated C-Log 2 in this camera, I would be actually tempted to buy it as a B camera for my C70. For now, I have to use two C70s because it's the best way to get C-Log 2 from two bodies. Canon, I hope you're watching this video. I hope you listen to us. And please, 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 please give us C-Log 2. All right, peace.
For me personally, as primarily a video shooter, the things that I would really love to see are, number one, unlimited record time with no overheating. To me, that's a really important thing. I don't like having to think about overheating. I've got the R3, I've got the R5. Both of them, you can get them to overheat in certain situations. So I'd really love if they find a way, even if that means putting a fan on, just like the R5C, find a way to make it not overheat at all, and for unlimited record time. And then thing number two would be C-Log 2. We've got it in all the big cameras, and I would love something small form factor with C-Log 2. We don't have that in the R5C unless you're shooting all the way up in 8K RAW. Even if that comes with like some sort of disclaimer, like, hey, you know, this footage may be slightly noisier or whatever, I still would like to have C-Log 2 because that's part of my workflow, and that's something I really like. So thanks a lot. See ya.
What's up everyone, my name is Kovacik and I'm a freelance DP and YouTuber based in Southern California. And my Canon R5 Mark II wishlist is extremely simple. All I really care about is having Canon C-Log 2. Right now I'm a Canon C70 and Sony FX3 shooter. I have two camera systems because I think that they're the best in their own kind of respective markets. And I really want to have a Canon mirrorless camera. Right now I'm basically begging Canon to make a Canon FX3. If they do that, I will completely switch over. But in order for them to make a Canon FX3, they need to give us C-Log 2 in the mirrorless cameras. So Canon, if you give us C-Log 2 in these mirrorless cameras, I will most likely sell my Sony gear and go full steam into Canon because the lenses are amazing, the camera bodies are extremely reliable, and the colors are just stunning. But that's because of C-Log 2. So Canon, please give us C-Log 2. You'll be the biggest hero for a lot of filmmakers out there.
Well, unsurprisingly, I think the most common theme you see with this is
C-Log 2.
C-Log 2.
C-Log 2.
C-Log 2.
C-Log 2.
Canon, that's what your customers are saying. Your customers want Canon Log 2. So let's see it. I promise you, I did not reach out to them asking them to say, hey, can you say Canon Log 2 for this video? Not at all. You can go ask them yourselves. I just said, hey, what's your top wish list item? Would you want to collab? And that's pretty much it. So thank you, everybody, for joining in on the collab. Links to all their channels down in the description below. So that said, I want to talk just real quick on a couple more things, and this one has to be hardware related. And Canon, let's retire the micro HDMI port and bring us full size HDMI. I think it's time. We're all asking for it. That would be super epic to have full size HDMI. Micro HDMI had its day, but it's time to let that ship sail. And if you really want to differentiate the R5C Mark II, if that's coming, maybe put a little mini SDI on there instead of HDMI. I don't know, thinking crazy, I know, but that'd be pretty epic. Next thing has to do with time-lapse movie recording. I actually use the time-lapse function on the R5 quite a bit because it's just so easy to use and it's just so convenient that it spits out a video file. But two things with time-lapse. Number one, let us choose what frame rate it'll spit out. Instead of just being limited to 30p, let us choose 24 or 25p or whatever frame rate that our project that we want our project to be filmed in. It'd be really cool to be able to do that. And the other thing is, give us a time lapse in whatever log profile that you are in. So if you're in Canon Log 2, then that time lapse would actually spit out a Canon Log 2 movie file so it can match the color grade of the rest of the project. That would be super awesome, and especially for like sunrise or sunset stuff, that extra dynamic range will really help us out in those time lapses. Moving on, the next thing has to do with linescaping. I'm assuming that the R5 II will be 45 megapixels to 60 megapixels, somewhere around there. What I would really love to see is some kind of version of non-line skipped 60p or even 120p, but I know that's probably a lot of processing power to downsample 8K down to a 4K image, but even 60p line skip, non-line skipped would be amazing, so you can match that 4K HQ that you have on the R5, have that same quality at 60p, and then for 4K 120, maybe give us a line skip version that does full frame, and then do a cropped in 4K 120 that's a 1-to-1 pixel readout that doesn't give us that line skip and gives us that 4K HQ quality. I don't know, that'd be kind of cool. Next up is I'd really like to see a dedicated switch somewhere to go from photo to video. I don't know where or how you would implement it. Right now, I mapped this little multi-function button to switch between photo and stills, and it actually works pretty good, but having that dedicated switch would be super handy for obvious reasons. So there's that. The other thing I would like to see is more custom function settings. That'd be really cool to see. Right now we have basically 3 custom function settings, but it's all software related. It's not a dial that you switch to. So give us like 10 or something, or maybe give us the option to create more custom function settings so that you could set 1 to 24p Canon Log 2, 60p, 4K 120, 8K, whatever, RAW, whatever, like have different ones so you don't feel limited by the number of custom function settings. All right, and lastly, it has to do with custom white balance, especially in video mode. And this is from Sony's playbook here. I absolutely love this on the a7S III, and that's the only Sony body that I had. But instead of taking a still and then going to set it to custom white balance in the menu and everything, just let us point at a gray card and click it right there and set the custom white balance there, and it's just so much quicker. And then while you're at it, when you have the custom white balance, just like say what that white balance setting is, so we have that for reference. And to me personally, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all I would like to see from the R5 Mark II. Canon is known for their 5 series cameras kind of being market disruptors in the sense of how revolutionary they are. Every 5 series camera since the 5D Mark I, really, but the 5D Mark II revolutionized the video world with DSLRs making video, which is super sick. And then the 5D3 and the 5D4, huge improvements. R5, like R5 II, I'm super stoked for that to come out, and I really hope that some of these things are implemented, especially Canon Log 2. Thank you. Peace.
This is my time now.